Looks like we're ready to go, folks. Welcome to the Planning Commission meeting for March 6, 2018. We ask first that you turn off your cell phone so we don't have to bother during the meeting. And for those that have not had the pleasure of attending a meeting before, basic housekeeping items is when we get to an item, the city staff presents on the item. And then once they're done presenting, it's first open just to the commission for technical questions. Once we're done with technical questions, then it goes to the public for comments and questions. And if you have something to say, we more than love to have you speak. You just step up to the microphone and state your name and address so we have it for the minutes. And then after public commentary is done, it comes back to the commission for discussion and usually a vote of some kind. With that, let us call the roll.
Robert Weigert. Thomas Perry.
Here.
Andrew Mott.
Here.
Kathleen Propp.
Here.
David Borsuk. Ed Bowen. Steve Cummings.
Here.
Michael Ford. John Hintz. John Kiefer.
Here.
Thomas Wojtek.
Here. Moving on to the approval of the minutes from February 20th. Do we have any corrections, deletions, et cetera?
Motion to approve. Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Let's move on to item number 1A, and it looks like if it's okay with the group, we'd like to vote on 1A and B together, so if we'll just let them present on both, and then we'll go from there, if that's all right. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
Yeah, we're going to be looking at a bunch of requests for this particular property located at 576 through 582 North Main Street. Two of the items, or two of the portions are on this item one. First request being made is a zone change from TR10, which is a two-family flat residential district, and CMU Central Mixed Use District. They're requesting a rezone to CMU PD. It's a central mixed use with a planned development overlay. And the second request is general development and specific implementation plan approval and a planned development amendment for an off-street parking lot at the same address, 576 and 582 North Main Street. So with that, up on screen is an existing zoning map. This part, or actually I should give you a little background information first. The subject property is about 1/3 of an acre in size, located mid-block of the 500 blocks of North Main Street and Jefferson Street. Property does have double frontage on Main and Jefferson, and it's approximately 60 feet south of East Parkway. The property is split zoned with the TR10 PD and the central mixed use, with the TR10 on the east side and the CMU on the west side. The property contains two-story buildings which were built in the late 1800s and early 1900s. Go on to the next slide here. The buildings are currently used for commercial uses on the first floors, and then office and storage spaces, and two housing units on the second floors. The east side of the lot over here is a gravelled area that fronts along Jefferson Street. The area was formerly the location of a two-family house which was raised in 1979, based on city records. No new use was ever established or approved by the city, so the property has been unofficially used as a gravel parking lot since at least 1994, which was the earliest, the earliest digital aerial photography that we have available. In 2007, this might ring a bell for some of you. On the left side, the property received a conditional use permit and planned development for approval of a 10-stall parking lot to alleviate the gravelled area. The lot was to serve the two residential units, and as well as provide parking for the commercial spaces fronting on North Main Street. At that time, the property consisted of 3 independent parcels, and as a condition of approval, the lots were combined into one, and that's how the split zone parcel came about. Usually that would have been caught at that time, but for whatever reason that was missed during review. Unfortunately, the parking lot was not constructed, and the property was sold to its current owner in late 2011. And then on the right side, in March of 2012, the current owner received a conditional use permit and plan development approval to allow 3 additional upper story and 1 ground level residential unit. And in addition to construction of the off-street parking area, which was never constructed with 2007 approval. Unfortunately, again, his plans never went forward with the development of the residential uses and the parking lot, so the gravel parking lot still remains as is, and which is the reason why the petitioner is coming back before us again today. As a separate item, that's going to be item 2. The applicant or the owner is applying for a certified survey map to split off, go back here, the 578 building from the rest of the parcel, and that's going to involve a subdivision variance, but I'll get into that a little bit later. All right, get back. So here is the proposed site plan for the new parking lot to replace the existing gravel lot on the east side of the property. The parking lot is proposed to be a 16-stall parking lot with access off to Jefferson Street. The parking lot's going to serve the 2 existing residential units at 578 North Main, and then accommodate or would be spaces provided for commercial spaces at the lower commercial units of both buildings. Lots are located with a 0-foot setback along the north and south lot lines, with the parking stalls configured perpendicular to the lot lines. The petitioner is proposing a small amount of green space, which is about 10% of the lot area, with green space over here, and then alongside Jefferson Street right here. The 4 westernmost stalls on the south side are going to be designated for the proposed lot for the CSM. 2 parking lots are required for the residential use, and 2 will be available for whatever commercial use is occurring on the first floor of that building. The access, or the current access to the gravel lot is located, go back to the air photo. Darn it. There we go. The current access off of Jefferson Street is located at the northeast corner of the property. And then looking at the site plan, it's proposed to centrally locate that with a 24-foot wide opening at the property line. The design of the lot is constrained due to the narrowness of the lot. It's only 60 feet wide, so a number of base standard modifications are going to be required for this parking lot to in order for it to be approved. First of all, as I mentioned, the proposed asphalt is going to have a 0-foot setback along the north and south property lines, where a 5-foot setback is required in the CMU district. So we are recommending approval of a 0-foot side yard setback for the parking area. Another item that won't, or it's just impractical for placement, is a dedicated pedestrian walk leading from the building out to Jefferson Street. There's just no practical location for that requirement, so staff is in support of another base standard modification for the elimination of that requirement. And again, this is in relation to the 0-foot setback along the north and south lot lines, where normally perimeter parking lot landscaping would be required, but obviously there's no room, so staff is in support of a base standard modification for the elimination of the perimeter parking lot landscaping. Another thing to note with the parking lot, there's a screening requirement. The screening requirements are currently met with a 6-foot tall solid fence located along the south lot line. And then to the north, there is an existing building fronting on Parkway Avenue, which the building has a 0-foot setback, so that adequately screens the parking lot, so that the screening requirement is met. I just mentioned that the parking lot and the building to the north are both going to have a 0-foot setback. We had concerns, as did the previous approval in 2011, that we want to avoid any damaged vehicles from hitting the building to the north. So staff is recommending that wheel stops be incorporated in the parking lot to avoid any vehicles from striking the building to the north. And then other items on the site plan. The petitioner is proposing a dumpster enclosure, which is located right behind the 582 North Main building, and is split by the proposed lot line. Over here is where the proposed lot line is supposed to be. Technically, the enclosure is located within a Jefferson Street front yard setback area, and that's going to require another base standard modification, as dumpster enclosures are not typically, or they're not allowed to be located in front yards. Staff is in support of that because there's really no other practical location to place a dumpster location without it being in a front yard on Jefferson Street. With the dumpster pad being located straddling the new proposed lot line, that's going to require a base standard modification for 0-foot setback. Just to the enclosure, it's going to have a 0-foot setback off of both properties. So it's, again, with the limited options for placement of the dumpster area, staff is in support of that. With the shared parking, or obviously it's going to be a shared parking situation once the parking lot's constructed and the CSM is approved. There's going to be a 0-foot setback for the parking area. That is allowed by right as long as a cross-access easement is recorded and or prepared and recorded at the Register of Deeds. One thing to note, staff had concerns with who's going to be responsible for upkeep and maintenance of the dumpster enclosure. So staff is recommending that additional wording be placed in the cross-access easement that would define future maintenance and future maintenance and use of the enclosure. Screening material has not been identified on the site plan. The 2011 approval just recommended that the screening match the fencing that was installed along the south property line, and staff is in agreement that the requirement is appropriate. One thing that will be reviewed during site plan review is the close proximity of the dumpster enclosure to the 582 North Main building. The Inspection Services Division is going to have to grant final approval for its location, and it may require possible screening materials be changed to require non-combustible materials. Let's see. Other items with the GDP, I'm sorry, the SIP. There is no additional signage being proposed at this time. Any new signage must comply with the regulations of the Central Mixed Use District. Landscaping is shown on the plan due to the small nature of the proposed improvements. Only six shrubs and 1 tree is being shown. Staff will review that during site plan review, but it sounds reasonable for those amounts. The proposed landscaping is proposed to be placed along the Jefferson Street frontage with 3 shrubs on either side and one decorative tree on the north island area. Stormwater management, no stormwater management plans have been submitted at this time. The Department of Public Works did comment on that, and they will have to collect and convey stormwater to the Jefferson Street right-of-way storm sewer. That will be resolved during site plan review. As far as building elevations, no changes are being proposed for the building elevations. So with that, staff feels that the proposed plan development is compatible with the existing development surrounding the area, the Central Business District, and is recommending approval of the zone change and the GDP and SIP plans with a number of conditions. Well, we're recommending approval of the zone change from the TR10 PD and CMU to the CMU PD as requested. And then for item 2, this is the plan development amendment and the general development plan and specific implementation plan approval. We are recommending approval with several conditions. Number one are the base standard modifications, which I described during the presentation. And then there are the other conditions that I mentioned throughout the report. Approval of proposed certified survey map, the cross-access easement and shared parking facilities, and maintenance and management agreement for the shared dumpster enclosure. The parking lot shall include wheel stops for the northern row of parking stalls. Refuse enclosure material should match the existing perimeter fencing on the south side. And then stormwater and grading plans be submitted and approved by the Department of Public Works.
All right, thank you, sir. Technical questions on that rather long item? Okay, seeing none. Anyone here from the audience to speak to this item today? Right up, sir.
My name is Robert Tollefson. I'm an engineer with Harrison Associates. I'm here on behalf of Steve Anderson, who is the owner of the two parcels. He runs the tattoo company at 576 Main Street. The reason we're here is because back in 2011 or whenever it was when Steve bought the property, he thought he'd be able to find tenants for the north building and be able to rent that out while he was running his tattoo shop. And what he's finding out is a little more difficult than he had thought. Wants to get away from that and just concentrate on his tattoo business. So he wants to sell the 582 parcel, and be able to do that, he needs to do the certified survey map, which then led to the city staff requesting that we go through the rezoning because we had mixed zoning on there, and we want to get the one zoning, and then also going through the site plan process with the new parking and everything that's going to be for both those buildings. So that's basically why we're here, and did a good job explaining all the different things that we need here. But
So are you good with the conditions that were proposed?
yes, those are perfectly fine. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Any
So,
questions for the petitioner as long as he's? Thank you, sir.
all right. Thank you.
Anyone else here to speak to this item today? Seeing none, back to the commission.
Move approval.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, let's call the roll.
Weigert.
Aye.
Perry.
Aye.
Lot.
Aye.
Crop.
Aye.
Bowen.
Aye.
Cummings.
Aye.
Ford.
Abstain.
Wojtek.
Aye.
Motion carried.
All right, moving on to item number 2 with two-lot land division and.
John Kiefer, I'm sorry.
We did shade it. Here's the one short. Oh, 7-1,
8-1.
8-1,
Yep,
8-0-1.
801.
All right, moving on to item number 2, two-lot land division and certified survey map and subdivision variance request for property located at 576 to 582 North Main.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Okay, here's part 2 of this request. The petitioner's requesting approval for a certified survey map at the subject property. Up on the screen, I have a aerial photo showing the proposed land division. Lot 1, which is a northern property, it's kind of an irregular dual L-shaped lot that encompasses the 582 North Main building. It's proposed to be just about a quarter acre in size and still maintains double frontage along both North Main Street and Jefferson Street. Lot 1's going to contain the majority of the proposed 16 stall parking area, which I just talked about. One of the requirements, which is carrying over to the CSM requirement, is a cross-access easement shall be prepared to allow Lot 2 access to their parking stalls at the southeast corner of the proposed Lot 2. And then just to the south of that is Lot 2, which encompasses the 576 North Main building. It's sized at about 0.129 acres, and this lot only has frontage on North Main Street. The lot is rather small. It's only 30 feet wide, but it is 188 feet deep. And it is going to encompass the 4 proposed parking stalls that were talked about in the item 1 request. The central mixed-use district does not have minimum district standards in regard to width, depth, and area. However, the subdivision regulations do require a 60-foot minimum width at the building setback line. So obviously, the lot's only 30 feet wide for its entirety, so a subdivision variance is required to permit that lot to be created without achieving that 60-foot minimum width at the building setback line. The inspections division commented that the owner will need to verify that a firewall is located between the 2 buildings. I did receive an email from the owner, and he's confident it does meet that requirement, but I need to contact the chief building official, and I'll have him contact the owner just to verify that is in fact in place. And the other comment that the inspections office had was they need to verify that the 2 parcels have their own utility services, including gas and electric. And then the Department of Public Works commented that the owner needs to verify that each proposed parcel is served by separate water laterals, as water laterals can't cross property lines. And they just need verification that each building is served by its own sanitary and storm sewer laterals. If they're not, if they're both shared, then some easements will be required. So with that, staff is recommending approval of the proposed 2 lots CSM and subdivision regulations variance for the creation of a parcel width of 30 feet at the buildings, or that does not achieve a 30-foot, or a parcel with a width of 30 feet at the building setback line, with some conditions. That the approved zone change is subject to this, or approved zone change to the subject site is made to CMUPD, which you recommended for approval in item 1. The owner shall provide verification that the common wall between 576 and 582 North Main Streets are fire rated, and that all public and private utilities shall be shown on the final certified survey map.
All right, thank you, sir. Technical questions from the commission? Okay, seeing none, anyone here from the public to speak to this item today? Once again.
Robert Tollefson with Harrison Associates in Appleton. Basically, these parcels were separate parcels when the buildings were built. Don't know why they were combined, but now we're resplitting them so Steve can sell off the north lot here. But so I've looked at it, and there are firewalls between each of the building sections, so there's no issues with that. And we verified with Public Works that there are separate sanitary and water laterals to each of the buildings, so there's no issues with that. We'll get the gas and the electric easements put on the CSM, because basically they were shared between the 2 properties when they brought the service in, but those services were brought in when those were separate properties at that time. But we'll get those put on, so we don't have any issues with any of the other stuff. So I think we're good to go with it.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you, sir. Anyone else here? Oh,
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Assistant Director of Public Works, Steve Godey, he just asked me to modify the condition number 3 and make a requirement, or would you rather have it as a separate condition?
Doesn't matter, according to the gentleman, it's been taken care of.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Nonetheless, it should be
Oh,
noted.
you want it noted? Okay. That if there is only one water service servicing both buildings, one of the buildings will have to acquire its own water service. So. Does that make sense?
yeah, that makes sense. Just, do we need to add that as a condition, or are we just noting that for the record?
It should be a condition.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, back to the commission for discussion.
This is with
With
that
condition.
addition.
Of the third, the modification of the third. All right, anything else? All right, call the roll.
Weigert,
Aye.
Harry,
Aye.
Mott,
Aye.
Crop,
Aye.
Bowen,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Ford,
Aye.
Kiefer,
Aye.
Wojtek.
Aye.
Motion carried, 9-0.
Moving on to item number 3, conditional use permit request for a personal storage facility at 538 West 11th Avenue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Welcome, sir.
Here's the subject site. It is a vacant parcel located on the north side of West 11th Avenue, about 150 feet east of Ohio Street. It is about a quarter acre in size, and it is zoned urban mixed-use district. And the surrounding area is a mixture of commercial and residential uses. Here's an aerial view of the subject site. The applicant is proposing a personal storage facility at the site. And a personal storage facility is a conditional use in the UMU district. Staff believes that the proposed use is compatible with existing uses in the area, and the facility is expected to generate very little traffic to the site. Here is the site plan. The proposed building will be 42 feet by 42 feet in size. It will meet setbacks and impervious surface requirements for the UMU district. Access to the site will be a Class 2 entrance from West 11th Avenue. Vehicles will need to back into the street from the site, but that is permitted as West 11th Avenue is classified as a local street. It is expected to have no employees, and therefore there are no designated parking areas required. However, there will be driveway access to the garage door that will serve as short-term parking for customers. Lighting and signage plans were not submitted. Any future signage could be addressed under a separate permit, and lighting will be addressed during the site plan review process. The site plan shows a combination of new and existing trees and shrubs, and it will meet landscaping requirements for the site. A stormwater management plan was not submitted. Plans will be required, and they will be reviewed during the site plan review process. And here are the proposed elevations, and they do meet design standard requirements for the use, as the front facade will have more than 15% Class 1 materials. And staff recommends approval of the proposed conditional use permit for a personal storage facility as proposed with the findings listed in your staff report.
All right, thank you. Technical questions from the commission? Seeing none? Anyone here from the public to speak to this item today? Come on up, sir.
Greg Polash, 82 East Waka. I am the applicant. And pretty much here just to ask for your support, and if there's any questions,
Okay.
I'm happy to try and answer them. One comment, there's a reference to customers. I don't anticipate there being any customers, as we intend to use it for our personal storage needs.
Any questions from the commission? Go ahead, Kath.
The back half of the part of the property will be green?
Yes, it currently is, and we'll maintain that.
Okay.
Any other questions for the commissioners? Thank you, sir.
All right.
Anyone else here to speak to this item today? Come on up, man.
I'm here to speak on the property on 11th. I am so glad that the property has been taken. We
Just-
put it,
We have your name and address.
oh, my name is Patricia A. Diener, and I talked to Ed Rowland, he's the owner. Today I keep it
Your
on.
address?
Oh, 530, now I got 530. 1316 Broad.
All right,
And I
thanks.
did talk to Roland today, and he informed me that there has been some process in it, and I told him I would come to the meeting and inform him on a few things, and I'm very happy that the gentleman is going to take it. It was a toss-up between us or him, and I'm just happy that the money came, that he could do it. And like the lady said in the back, is that going to be green? The whole yard is green. You got about 2 feet from the building behind us, that the laundromat, it's no more a laundromat, and I think it'd be nice having a garage there.
Okay, thank you very much, ma'am. Anyone else here to speak to this item today? All right, back to the commission for discussion.
Move approval.
Any discussion on that motion? All right, let's call the roll one more time.
Iger,
Aye.
Harry,
Aye.
Mott,
Aye.
Crop,
Aye.
Bowen,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Ford,
Aye.
Kiefer,
Aye.
Wojtek.
Aye.
Motion carried, 9-0.
Okay, moving on, item number 4, a general development plan approval for a hotel, commercial, and retail uses at the 1700 block of Oshkosh Avenue.
Okay, so this has been workshopped, I think, a couple times, so the commission should be relatively familiar with it. This is the area in question. Today, we're basically looking at the area from proposed North Westfield Extended through the old Robbins property. It's approximately 7 parcels, a little over 6 acres in size. Right now, it's a mixture of vacant commercial buildings and some vacant residential buildings. So here's an area of the site there. You can see we have kind of the old Robbins property. And then some of those sites have already been cleared of homes, and there are some existing homes that will be cleared as part of this project. And again, it's kind of lining up with the North Westfield Extended. This will be the section to the west side of it. So phase 1 of the development is considering a 2-lot CSM would be required. The proposed hotel lot would be subdivided off for the remainder of the retail commercial space. The applicant is proposing approximately 112-room extended stay hotel. Staff is noticing that we will need to, during the SIP, take care of some cross-parking, cross-access, cross-signage easements, as it's intended to kind of function as a single development, even though it will be 2 parcels in nature. Phase 2 is kind of indicated as right now approximately 5 retail buildings, showing approximately total of 38,000 square feet. But again, this is just the conceptual GDP level. Those buildings' exact locations, types of uses could change, and we'll all have to come back through as SIPs. The applicant is showing right now 2 access drives off of North Westfield, one servicing kind of the commercial on the front, and one servicing the hotel. Staff during the SIP will need to review the exact location of that southern access drive, as it may require an access control variance because it might not meet spacing requirements off of Oshkosh Avenue. But that final location will be done during the SIP, and we will handle it at that time. The applicant is also indicating one off of the Kohler or yet to be named street extension. Right now, that is actually shown as going through a city-owned parcel. During the CSM that created the Oshkosh Corp site and this Kohler Street extension right away, an outlot was created that is still owned by the city. But we'll kind of discuss that a little bit towards the end of this. But obviously that will have to be worked out with the city of that parcel if it is intended to go through it. Right now the site plan indicates approximately 142 parking spaces. Staff has not run a parking calculation on the site yet because a lot of those uses are still in flux. As they SIP out the various segments of this, we will have to run each through the code. I can say right now it appears that the hotel site meets its requirement, which is per kind of the first phase of this development that you'll see is the SIP for the hotel in the future. Again, staff is recommending that we will need some cross-access, cross-parking agreements as this site is really functioning as a single parcel. Staff is going to recommend that there be a condition placed on it that the 2-lot CSM does come forward first before we see any future developments. Also noting that there would be several base standard modifications that will need to be done as we do the SIPs, as there is quite a bit of pavement that is crossing what will be those internal property lines. So we'll have to handle some base standard modifications to take those pavement lines down to 0 between the retail lot and the hotel lot. But again, we'll handle that as part of the SIP process. Stormwater management plans have not been submitted at this time. They do indicate a small conceptual stormwater management pond there. They have been in some discussions with Department of Public Works about the unique kind of character of this area and how stormwater management is going to be handled. And I know we do have a meeting upcoming between Department of Public Works, ourselves, and the applicants, Civil, to start to figure out exactly how stormwater is going to be handled for this area. Conceptual signage plan is shown. It's very rough. It shows basically one monument sign down in the southeast corner of the property. As of this plan, that was the only sign shown, so staff was recommending that some conditions be placed on it, that we do a base standard modification to allow kind of the hotel lot to have signage out on that frontage. Is 2 separate lots. We would need to issue a base standard to allow that signage. And then also that a condition we place on it that if the intent is for this to function as a single parcel and a single development, that then the hotel lot not also be allowed its own sign if the intent is for them to be on that combined monument sign, they'd then not be allowed to have their own independent identification sign as well. Some preliminary building facade have been provided. The retail was basically shown as just purely conceptual, the types of buildings that could go there. The applicant didn't provide a version of the residence in Marriott that is proposed for Lot 1. That shows a building that was recently built. It does not quite meet the standards of the corporate business park district, but we're working with the applicant to make sure they meet that 75% standard of Class 1. We've been having some ongoing discussions with them about moving them in that direction, getting that up to those minimum code requirements that the new zoning district did establish. So they are aware of those requirements and are planning on meeting those. Now, so since the original plan has been submitted, the TIA for Oshkosh Avenue has been finished. Council is weighed in on what they'd like to see there. So previously, Oshkosh Avenue was a 66-foot wide right-of-way. The intent is for that to go up to 90 feet, so the city would be looking to acquire 24 additional feet of right-of-way along Oshkosh Avenue. In doing so, some preliminary discussions have started to take place about some land swaps between that right-of-way the city would be requiring for Oshkosh Avenue, right-of-way the city would be requiring for North Westfield Street, and that kind of outlot I showed you early on that was to the north side. So preliminary discussions are taking place about the applicant then taking over that parcel and kind of being made whole for the right-of-way that's being acquired. So this is a more recent site plan we have been provided with. Again, it's not the site plan that we're technically reviewing as part of the GDP, but we did want to make you aware that the applicant is working kind of to massage the site a little bit more as we move towards the SIP level. The hotel's kind of been flipped 180 degrees where it's moved closer to both Kohler Street and Westfield Street. Kind of some consolidations of the buildings into fewer larger buildings that would possibly be multi-tenant buildings. Again, it's not the plan we're necessarily making a recommendation on today, but we wanted to keep you aware that there are going to be some additional processes coming forward for probably some land disposition if they do acquire that other lot. And then the SIP that is intended to go on for the hotel. That hotel SIP likely will not go forward until the land swap or whatever happens with that parcel is determined. And you can see this, they did move that North Westfield first driveway up that would probably then meet codes. That could eliminate one of the base standards. It also shows 2 signs, one on both the east and west end of the property that would be code compliant because they are allowed 1 per frontage for both Oshkosh Avenue and North Westfield. So we just want to make you aware that we're doing a GDP here, but things are still evolving as we move these projects forward.
So will we be doing another one?
They'll be coming back for their SIP, so we'll
Okay.
we'll kind of amend the GDP during the SIP
Got it.
process. So staff is recommending approval of the general development plan with a couple of conditions. First, the approval of a certified survey map showing that 2-lot configuration that's being proposed. Dedication of the right-of-way for the North Westfield extension per Department of Public Works requirements. Cross-access parking signage and stormwater easements provided between the lots. Base standard modification to allow kind of that joint freestanding signage concept, even though it's 2 lots. And that the hotel lot shall not have an independent freestanding signage.
That it? All right, thank you, sir. Technical questions? Kathy and Michael.
What's the first of all, go back to the,
This one.
that one, whichever shows the lot lines. I found it very confusing on,
Between the 2 lots for the proposed development.
right.
Okay, so this would basically be 1 lot. This would be the second lot.
Oh, okay. And that portion above is the
So this
city-owned
right now
property in
is
question.
city-owned property that was created when the right-of-way in the CSN was done for North Kohler Street.
Okay. I'm confused by the curve on the North Westfield Street, on the upper right-hand corner. Was that something that was talked about last time?
A little bit, that's actually, if I can have Steve address that.
Thank you.
Actually, Mark, if you could flip back to the diagram that shows the CSM, please, or the right-of-way. Yes, as you can see with the red lines kind of near the top there, the extension of Keller Street as it comes to as it comes to Westfield, does have a radius on that corner there. That is the intent of that road, is that it will be a radius. It will not be a 90-degree turn. It'll be a free-flowing turn, and Oshkosh Corporation will have a driveway off of that radius serving their parcel, so that there's a distinction between the public street and the private entranceway, so vehicles aren't headed eastbound on the extension of Keller Street and inadvertently enter the Oshkosh Corporation parcel thinking it's an extension of the street, at which point in time they would have to try to turn around and then exit that facility.
Okay, I didn't quite get all that because papers were coming through. Will this be talked about in the next,
We'll discuss a little bit in the
Item
next
on
item
the-
as well
Okay.
about, as
Okay.
Steve kind of said, the intent is to have a radius turn there, so Oshkosh Corp can have a driveway that comes in, so someone doesn't confuse it as part of the street. If I'm
Okay.
adequately
so
summarizing
North
that.
Westfield as a public street will not go through all the way
At this,
closer to the lake?
at this point in time, there is no intention to do that. There would be no, if the city should decide to do that at some point in time, the right-of-way would still be there. We didn't parallel the curve on the other side, so if the city at some point in time wanted to dedicate that and extend it, it could be done.
Okay. Which we might need for access to the possible park. We might need Westfield extended for access to the park.
Certainly, however it develops out there, I think there are a lot of alternatives that can be explored at that point in time when the plan develops.
One more question about the acreage approximate of outlot, whatever that city-owned property area is,
It's a-
relative to whatever right-of-way on Oshkosh Ave.
Want me to take that?
You want to answer that one, Steve?
Yeah, I can answer. The outlot's approximately 30,500 square feet. The total right-of-way that the city would need beyond what would be expected to be dedicated is in the 32 to 34,000 square foot range, if I remember correctly. So we'll still have a little bit of additional land that we may need to swap to make the developer whole.
Normally speaking, right-of-way, property owners dedicate right-of-way.
Yes, up to what's the required. In this case, we're requiring above and beyond what would normally expected of a developer to
Oh.
dedicate.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Michael?
Yeah, so the GDP, if it's gonna be modified, I assume the reason we're passing it as is today is because of a timeline issue?
It's partially the timeline and partially because there is a lot of things that will come forward in the future.
Okay.
That we're gonna be SIPing this kind of one step at a time. This lays the groundwork so they can start to do those finalized plans.
Fair enough.
Other technical questions? Yes.
Location of the detention basin, the revised figure.
Again, they don't have one shown. They're looking at maybe some, I know Steve is here. There's still a lot of stuff up in the air of how that is going to be done. They may be looking at some within the parking lot.
Okay.
The city is considering, and Steve, wherever he went, is looking at some regional stormwater management options here. That a full stormwater pond, as you traditionally see in maybe a single lot development, is probably not going to be needed.
As the TIF was proposed and approved, it requires these developments to manage their water quality element only, and the city will be taking care of the water quantity element at a different location, either by direct piping it out or detention basin.
This, again, is something else that as we
Yep,
unfold
and
this, will
it's
have
one of
to
the things
be-
that we
has
kind
to
of,
be
we had to
addressed.
wait for the TIA to finish to make some of those determinations of what was going to need to be done.
Okay.
And now that that's been done, the developers can start to now work on finalizing those plans of how it's going to take place.
Other technical questions? Mayor Cummings?
Just one question, assuming Northwest will continue to be the entrance to Oshkosh Corp., has anyone talked to Oshkosh Corp. About signage needs on that northwest corner?
I think actually Oshkosh Corp's primary entrance is going to be the roundabout over at Kohler that will be extending up. They envision them, and we'll talk about that, I guess, when we get to the Oshkosh Corp site. Their employee numbers show that the majority of their traffic is going to be coming off of 41, likely going through the roundabout, the North Kohler extension, and into their property.
Other technical questions? Excellent. Anyone here from the public to speak to this item today? Come on up, Steve.
Steve Hoopman, 5105 Iameda. We're the property developer, and Ben Ganther is with me from Ganther Construction, who has a rendering of what the hotel as proposed kind of would look like. So we're here to answer any of the questions. The handouts that I did give you shows some additional commercial buildings, and those are just kind of concepts of what the front buildings could look like. It's all up in the air at this point, depending on who ends up in there and if we end up with a clinic or not, and the type of fast food locations that might go in there. So the big thing is getting the hotel under construction and getting it into a point where we can get the SIP ready to submit within the next 30 days or so, which would have the stormwater management plan along with it. So.
Okay.
So this is their 8th or 9th generation of the Marriott Residence Inn. There are a number of them that exist throughout the country, and we've just kind of modified it and tweaked it a little bit to meet the new building requirements. Definitely does add at least $500,000, if not more, in cost to the project, making it 75% Class 1 material. Instead of, on the top part, instead of doing an EFIS, which is a cement board, we're having to bring the brick up further up the sides, and some stone on the front, and then some brick. But kind of creates a little bit of a problem, because in the main entrance on the brick doesn't actually start till the second floor, where normally it would be EFIS, but with brick starting on the second floor, we're gonna have to do some additional steel work with posts and beams to support the weight of the brick and so forth. So the building requirements definitely do add to the cost. On a single story or story and a half building, it's not as bad, because there's, you're not as dealing with as much vertical height, but in this particular case it does. So this one, I believe, shows pretty much 75% on the 360 design, so. So So I don't know if there are any questions or not, but.
The top material here is a product by a company called Allure. It is a cement panel that rests between extruded aluminum strips that create that rustification strip that you see segmenting that upper material.
Do we have any questions for Mr. Hoopman or Mr. Ganther? Yes, go ahead.
Just looking at the drawing along Oshkosh Ave in that parking lot that's spread out to there. Is there additional screenings? I see some brown dots around the turn area, which I'm assuming is.
Yeah, that would be probably, the bigger ones in front are trees and shrubs, and that would be probably more low vegetation shrubs around there.
I would say this conceptual landscaping
Yeah.
is far from what they're gonna end up having to do. If you remember those code requirements we added within the corporate business park district of requiring 50% of their yard landscaping to be moved out to that perimeter. So you're gonna see significantly more plantings as we move through the
And it all
actual
has to be
SIP level.
approved through that process. Any other questions for the gentleman? Go ahead, Kath.
I think this was said before, but I need it repeated. There'll be 2 monument signs, one on,
Basically,
the upper left corner, one on the lower right corner.
correct. That's what
That
we're looking at.
Would serve for the entire site, including the hotel. Is that what I heard?
That's what we're trying to do. We may, and I guess this is the one objection that I might have, I'm not sure, right down by the driveway where it turns into the hotel, Marriott may want a small sign just saying Marriott, Residence Inn, one of these pointing directional signs or something like that.
Directional signs we would handle separately than.
Directional, yeah, right, okay. So, but yeah, the 2 main monument signs would be on the east and west corners.
There would likely be wall signage on the hotel itself.
Correct, yep. On the backside and whatever the standards are, I mean, that's not a
Yeah.
problem to meet that, so, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions for the petitioners? All right, thank you, gentlemen. Anyone else here in the audience to speak to this item today? Seeing none, back to the commission.
To approve.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Anybody has a comment?
I just want to point out that this looks like a very nice plan, and a Residency Inn is certainly a quality
They are.
property. Stayed in them before. The street layout was new to me because I wasn't here at the last meeting, so that's different. But this is also because we, the commission, decided to ask for more right-of-way for our gateway. We are therefore carving it out of our park, what's left of the park. So we're losing 30,000 square feet, roughly, whatever the numbers were, of parkland, and to say nothing of the roadway. So we won't have a, call it 70-acre park, and I don't know what the net will end up being. That's a comment.
Okay, thank you.
How many acres are we, you give us a square footage, what is that?
30, how many acres is 30,000?
30,000 square feet is maybe a little over,
Two-thirds.
about 2/3 of an acre.
Acres, 43,365.
560.
560 square feet.
Between that and the roadway.
Definitely losing something. Steve, and then Tom.
One comment, I made this before, that all of the additional buildings along Oshkosh Avenue will come through us for approval. And my fear has been since day one that we don't look like another frontage road. We don't wind up looking like Jackson Street coming in or anything else. That this is our gateway, and this is our one and only chance to really do a gateway right. All of them just plain evolved over the last 100 years, so I think we have to be very cautious of what we allow to go in there architecturally.
Thomas? No. Anything else? All right, let's call the roll, please.
Tigert,
All right.
Harry,
Aye.
Mott,
Aye.
Crop,
Aye?
Bowen,
Present?
Cummings,
Aye.
Ford,
Aye.
Kiefer,
Aye.
Wojtek.
Aye.
Motion carried 801.
Moving on, item number 5, general development plan approval for a global headquarters at 2175 Pinoquist.
Okay, so here we have the existing land use pattern for the Oshkosh Corp Global Headquarters site. It's approximately slightly over 30-acre parcel. The previous land use was obviously the golf course. Here we have the aerial kind of showing the area that has been subdivided out through CSM for the Oshkosh Corp Global Headquarters. It has approximately an 80-foot wide right-of-way strip along the new North Westfield, North Kohler extended intersection. Oshkosh Corporation is intending to construct an approximately 189,000 square foot global headquarters, which would employ possibly up to 650 people on the location. Building is a mixture of office space, conference room, atrium, training center, some cafes, a lot of amenities they're trying to add for their employees, as well as the associated surface parking lot. Kind of the first thing that they've provided is just some conceptual images of some of the elements that they're trying to incorporate into their plan. So they're talking about doing a large kind of, where did I lose my mouse? There it is. Plaza patterned patio kind of entrance to the building. So this is just an example of what you may see of the large plaza out in front of the building. They're also looking to integrate some landform features into their site. So they've provided some examples of what those landforms could look like. If you were at the workshop, there was a little bit of discussion about the Gibbons seat walls. This is, again, another example of kind of what they're talking about when they talk about the seat walls. And then, again, they are talking about several outdoor dining spaces incorporated and outdoor activity spaces around the site. Kind of an example of the tree and entryway example of what they're talking along their access drive. And then how some of the other areas are intended to be kind of a more of a park meadow tree planting area. So there's just some pictures showing kind of examples of what they're looking at. Here are some renderings of what the building hopefully will look like. In the top right, we have a rendering from the extended Riverwalk of what the building will look like from that view. And the one in the southwest is kind of from the parking lot looking at the main entrance and plaza area of that building. There's kind of, you can see how one of the Gibbons seat walls is being incorporated into the site. So here's the rough landscape plan. Right now, they are looking at just, I believe, the one main entrance along that northwest field, North Kohler Street extended. It's approximately a 39-foot wide driveway, which will include one drive entrance in and two drive lanes on the way out. Here you can see kind of the large, approximately 650 parking space parking lot that's intended for the site. Moving through, here's just a rough signage plan. Obviously, this will require a SIP as well, but they're indicating wall signage on the north and south sides of the building. That sign area right now, they're reserving approximately 416 square feet of space for each of those signs. Final signage plans have not been determined, so they're just trying to throw some placeholders out there. On the north side of the building, we have about 432 square feet of linear foot of building. So that would be their maximum allowed signage is 432 square feet. So the 416 they show, which is just a large box, would be appropriate. On the south elevation of the building, they only have about 328 feet of building frontage, so that sign will either need to be scaled back to meet that maximum sign requirement, or they could seek a base standard once final signage plans are made. Said right now they have a lot of indecision on what those are going to be. They're still working through that process between what they would like to see out there. They do indicate 2 potential monument sign locations, and this is something that I know we talked about a little bit at the workshop could change. They may end up revising that just to 1 monument sign, but right now they're indicating 2 of them, one kind of at the main entry into the parking lot, and one along the main entry drive is where you enter the site. If they do choose to go with the 2 sign option, this board would grant a base standard modification because the code only allows 1 sign. But until they kind of make those finalized plans, we'll handle that during the SIP process. They are indicating 5 outdoor display areas on the site. Now, when the Corporate Business Park Zoning District was established, outdoor display is not permitted. So they will need to do a base standard modification to do their vehicle display areas. In your staff report, they did outline 6 points about the kind of the intended use of how they want to do this. Instead of me reading them one by one, I would kind of let you look through them, but just to highlight very briefly, these are intended to have vehicles come and go, not be permanent outdoor displays. If they have a vehicle, they may display it for a while. If there's a certain client coming into town that might purchase that type of vehicle, they may have that out there for a little while. They're intended to be kind of landscaped, formed features. They're not going to be your outdoor display where you see salt next to the gas station. These are intended to kind of be vehicle display areas, 1 or 2 vehicles at a time maybe on each of these sites. Now the final details of that are still being worked out exactly how they want to use them. But they're looking at like grasscrete, so these aren't going to be large concrete areas where they're just going to park a vehicle. The intention is for them to look kind of blended into the site. And there would obviously be no retail sales or anything. These would just be simply vehicles that they're displaying that are products they make. So staff is generally supportive of that base standard modification, but we'll handle it during the SIP once the final details are worked out of exactly how they intend to use these areas. Stormwater management plans have not been provided at this time. Again, similar to like the last project we talked about, there's ongoing discussions. I know Steve has been in many meetings. We're figuring out exactly how stormwater management is going to be done. I think they're pretty close to having that finalized. We actually did receive their SIP submittal that included a lot of that documentation. So this site is proposed to come back to you in the first meeting in April for full SIP requirements. So those are being taken care of, but we'll handle it at that time. in terms of landscaping, obviously we have a very large site that has a lot of landscaping requirements. The applicant is still finalizing those landscaping plans, but they have indicated kind of 3 areas where base standard modifications may be sought during the SIP level. The first of those is on the primary entrance to the building. So our landscaping code requires that 50% of all of your landscaping points be placed on your primary building facade. So in this case, the south facade of the building. The applicant has a large plaza area and some of those landform features where they want to use the vehicle display. And they can achieve 50% of their points along that facade because it's going to be taking up some of those other elements. They've indicated they still intend to meet the full requirement of their points, but they would be looking for a base standard to move those bushes kind of around the rest of the building and landscape in front of the building where they can. But again, that'll be handled at the SIP, but they have indicated that is one area that they may not be able to meet the code for the location. The second is for our yard landscaping requirement. So in the new code, we established that fact that 50% of your yard landscaping must be along your street frontage. Well, in this case, they're required, based on the size of their development, 3,800 points of yard landscaping. They only have an 80-foot wide strip of actual street frontage, which is primarily made up of that drive entrance. So it's a little hard to fit 3,800 points of landscaping, or 1,900, half of that, into that little area. So they're looking at, again, they want to meet the yard landscaping requirement in terms of their total number of points, but with the unique configuration of this lot, it's just not feasible to put it all in that little area. So they want to kind of spread it out a little more throughout the site. The final requirement that they may be considering a baseline modification for is perimeter yard. Because we do have the corporate business park zoning adjacent to what will hopefully be the redevelopment of the park, they're required to put a berm in. The applicant has expressed they would rather not have to rip out a lot of the existing trees along the perimeter of the site, just to construct a berm and put trees back on it. Their intent is for this to function, especially the interior of their site, to function more of a transition area between the park and themselves, where they blend together in a seamless park-like design. So in general, staff is kind of supportive of that. It doesn't really make sense in a site of this nature to be berming adjacent to the park. No lighting plan has been submitted at this time, but they will have to provide a code-compliant photometric plan as part of the SIP process. Finally, we'll move forward here. Conceptual building elevations have been provided. They're actually pretty close to having those finalized. Here's where I talked kind of about the sign. Right now, they just have some placeholders on the building as those sign plans are finalized. Right now, at the time the GDP submittal was done, they were at 74.2% of Class 1 materials, so just below the 75% requirement. We've talked with the applicant about that, and they will be getting that up to the 75% requirement by SIP. I said they have made those submittals. I haven't had time to review the documents, but I know they have indicated that they will meet that 75% requirement of Class 1 materials on all 4 sides of the building. And here you can kind of see rough examples of what they're looking at for their vehicle display. These are just some conceptual showing where the possible buildings, freestanding signs could be located in approximate sizes. They're looking at a slightly larger sign out towards the street entrance, and possibly a smaller monument sign as you would get into that parking area. Staff is recommending approval of the Jelly Mill Development Plan. We understand there's a lot of things that are still to be finalized during the SIP process, and a lot of those we'll handle during that process.
Thank you, sir. Technical question? Kathy?
As usual.
problem.
Go back to the site plan with the, not that, the pretty one, with the,
That one.
right, yeah, that one. To the, that's a driveway or parking area, yeah, going up that,
Yep,
into the
this-
building, that's where the trucks can access?
Yeah,
Or
this
what
is
that?
like the, I don't want to say loading dock, but delivery
dock area.
area and whatnot is here.
Oh, okay. So that darker portion would indicate kind of the delivery
this
into
right
the
here.
interior of the building, sort of.
Correct, and I think we'll have the applicant discuss, but there may be an entry point in here for some vehicles, why not? Because they are proposing kind of a museum atrium area inside the building that'll only
Okay.
access to get those type of things into the building.
Okay, and then these vehicle display areas would be on that grassy.
Yeah, so they're
what
showing.
looks like grassy area to either side of the plaza.
They show 5 of them, so basically one here out in front of the building, kind of broken into 2 sections. One possibly here, one potentially here, one in this kind of median that separates the parking, and then potentially one, I can't remember the other one is. And then one, sorry, down possibly by the entrance where you come in. So we can go back to the landscape plan. Potentially one down in this area.
Okay, I don't know if this was talked about in workshop last time, but I would, when it comes back, then it's going to be final, and we can talk more about landscaping and how to, this blending idea that they have.
Yep.
About, because right now in the materials we got, it looks a bit stark.
Yeah, I would say during the SIP will definitely be, there'll be some conditions being placed on this related to that use.
And so no display areas are planned on the lake frontage.
I would say
of
the
building.
The closest ones are kind of, they're showing one here
Okay,
and one here.
so sort of on the edge of the building, but
Yeah, if we'll go to that
Maybe a-
drawing for you. You can see kind of the 2, one here adjacent to the east side of the building, and then one to the west side of the building over here.
And again, I'm sure the plan commission talked about some of these interesting features like these rock walls, called the site wall. Looks to me like it's rocks carefully placed in chicken wire.
There is a wire mesh.
Is that right? Because that does not appeal to me.
Some of the comments we're looking for to see what plan commission opinion of that type of use is.
When we
Well,
did,
natural
when we
rock-
did the workshop, what was, once we got the internet connected without Jeff here, what the images that were shown to us from Milwaukee looked better than what we're seeing here.
Yeah, if you, in their rendering, if we can go back to the rendering.
You really
it's-
couldn't see the netting so well.
Yeah,
in the-
this
Folder.
is kind of the rendering example of what that could be. I don't know if that image necessarily is the best, and we can definitely have the applicant address it, but this is one of those given seat walls that they're discussing trying to.
My objection is the chicken wire part of it, and I'm being crude when I say that. Okay, that's all I have right now.
Other technical questions from Commissioner? Go ahead, Ed.
This is probably, maybe it's Steve, I don't know, but that drive aisle connecting to, or the driveway connecting to North Kohler / Westfield, I guess how much review has that gotten from Public Works, traffic? I guess I get a little bit of heartburn thinking that there's gonna be 600 to 700 cars trying to come out of there at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, whatever it is. I know it's 2 lanes, right?
Correct.
So there's essentially a right-hand veer right lane that's gonna go out to the roundabout, and then there's I would imagine a left-hand turn going out Westfield.
We haven't gotten a great deal of detail about that. What we have worked out is, it kind of looks like this is basically almost a T intersection, the way it's showing up on this image. As we've been working through the design with Oshkosh Corp and their engineers, that the street will have a radius and it will be a driveway essentially coming out at mid-radius, forming, for lack of a better term, I guess, a Y, so to speak, at that point in time. So they will have the two drive lanes coming out where one can turn right and one can turn left onto Keller Street or Westfield essentially, and head away from there.
And based on the data provided by the TIA, you guys are mostly comfortable with what you're seeing from a traffic loading standpoint?
The actual, with the professional office use of this, the peak fluctuations are much less than with a set schedule type of facility. So there was no concern from the TIA of the traffic leaving and having substantial backups at that point in time.
All right. Other technical questions?
What happens if someone's coming down Westfield and going by the entrance, unrelated to,
Just driving by.
and there's cars leaving? What control point is that? Is that?
The Oshkosh Corp is a driveway onto the public street. The public street will have the right of way. There'll be an apron, so the vehicles exiting out of Oshkosh Corp will have the stop condition.
Other technical questions? Thank you, Steve. Anyone here from the public to speak to this item today?
David Pano with Trammell Crow Company on behalf of the applicant, Oshkosh Corporation. My address is 2900 Lindale Street, but that's in Chicago. Really more here to, if there's any questions from a technical standpoint, but if there's no detail requested, then I think you guys have, presented it well, and staff has conveyed our intent well. But here to, if any questions, glad to talk through any detail.
We've had that little discussion about the little wall. Could you reassure people that it's going to?
Yes.
It's not chicken wire
It's
and that.
not exactly chicken wire, but I do
But-
get the reference, so we'll certainly find some better imagery to convey that, as well as other materiality, certainly, that we'll be getting into detail with at the SIP. But I have a note of that, so we'll make sure that that we can address that, because obviously we don't intend for it to be perceived that way, and obviously want it to be representative of the rest of the quality of the facility.
So you're here to talk about anything and everything that is being presented here?
It's fair game, yes.
Okay.
Okay, Kathy, you go first then.
Well, I
Ed.
had my point about the blending in of the vehicle display,
Yes,
and I will be very interested in how that comes out.
yes, yep.
I like these landforms, which, having spent some time in Egypt, I refer to them as pyramids myself.
Yep.
But if they're green, if they're grassy, or almost grassy,
Yep, that is the intent, yes.
then I like them much better.
Yep, no, that is our intent, and that's one of the conditions we're kind of working through, and there was a lot of discussion about the display areas as well.
Yeah.
So in effort to preserve those as green, which is our intent, we're probably more so gonna keep some of that off of the vehicles up off the top, a little bit less, just structurally, that becomes more difficult and also harder to achieve that green look that we were going for. So you'll probably see those vehicles more centered around the entrance as opposed to
Oh,
up
okay,
on
good.
top of the,
Good.
for all
I
the
thought
reasons
the-
you just mentioned, because we
I
didn't
thought
want
the
it to be a
rendering here
concrete,
was awfully stark.
we didn't want it to be a concrete ramp with a truck sitting on top of it. We wanted it to be a green landform to be that, as opposed to.
And I appreciate your interest in having your private driveway with a guardhouse. We will be looking at what the guardhouse looks like also.
It would certainly be commensurate with the rest of the
But
materials.
if it's a little small structure.
Yeah, I mean, we're planning a small spot that fits within the boulevard there, so that can, A, provide a turnaround for anybody that accidentally ended up there or needs to turn around, and then they don't have to go all the way up into the facility or back out. Obviously, that wouldn't work.
Right. And I was also interested in the rendering, whatever you want to call it, of what the lakeside will look like.
Yeah.
I mean, on the other, one of the other, yeah, there. Obviously, on the left, that's the public path.
Correct, yes.
And then there's greenery, separation between that and what's probably
We're working
not
with.
intended to be a public path.
Correct. We are working with staff to determine an appropriate access point for Oshkosh Corp employees. More than likely, that would be intended for Oshkosh Corp employees to access the patio or vice versa, leave the patio to get to the trail system.
Yeah, that's
Okay,
kind of
go back to that, would you please?
here on the site plan, where they're private.
Yeah, so that rendering you're looking
Right
at is
there?
kind of
Oh,
just
okay.
left of where the cursor was.
Yeah,
Yeah,
kinda
right around
right
there,
around
kind of
here is
looking
where
back
it
to the
came.
northeast is that perspective.
Oh, I see. How would you intend to have a separation between the Oshkosh Court property and that public?
We are working with their security group, but a lot of it is intended, that space is kind of a buffer, it's kind of a natural buffer. There might be some small directional signage for pedestrians, similar to there's some signage at the golf course to let people know where those boundaries are. We might define that kind of trail to just be a little more obvious visual indicator. But a lot of it is intended for some of that space just to serve as a buffer, just a natural buffer.
Well, I like that concept.
Yeah, I mean,
But I also appreciate the need to not have people swarming.
they do have some security needs, obviously, as any office would, but but they are trying to fit in with that surrounding and not, we don't want any walls or fences.
Yeah.
And
would
I
appreciate that.
agree with Kathy saying that a berm is at that spot, I think a berm's a bad idea.
Yeah, yeah.
In terms of the view of the river.
No, we
and the
don't,
lake.
exactly.
Yep.
This looks like, and I think he said earlier, this might be natural landscaping, grass.
We are looking at some.
That's what it looks like here.
We are looking at some kind of native, exactly, native grasses, prairie grasses. It's kind of no-mow mixes and blending that with some of the more formal landscaping as you come up the entry drive and some of the stuff around the building, and then kind of transitioning into what would be a little bit more natural landscape for the site like that.
If you can achieve something like that, environmental people would enjoy, would appreciate.
Yep.
I think that will go a long way.
Yeah.
But it would need to be, appropriate native plantings.
Certainly.
That is.
Yep, and I couldn't tell you exactly what that planting
And I
is
can't tell you
today.
either. I just know.
But we have a landscape architect that can inform us, and then we'll share that certainly. Because that is a key piece of making this kind of sustainable and maintainable and practical. So.
Okay, thank you.
Ed?
One thing, just as a thought for when we're back with the SIP, which sounds like it's going to be coming back in April, I guess. I think just because of the scale of this and the amount of material involved, it might not hurt to have a material board.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Because
Please.
this is what we get in our packet.
Looks good, right?
Well, Darren's department can't afford a color copier, so we get this.
They can
And
afford
it's-
it, we
and
just
we
never
really
get the.
can't.
Yeah, exactly.
This looks
No.
So honestly, like we have a really hard time. I think
No,
We've all talked
absolutely.
about this
Yeah.
before. We see, I see sort of what a block on that or a stone on that building might look like, but having a material board that we can actually see what's there,
Yeah,
I think is
absolutely.
going to be really, really helpful for us at our
Yep.
next meeting.
Now we'll get some of the building materials.
I'm doing your dirty work now. You don't have to ask him for it. So
Any other questions for petitioner? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anybody else here to speak to this item today? Once? Twice? All right, back to the commission.
approval.
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? Go ahead, Kath.
I'm sorry, I'm
all right.
hogging, I'm hogging time. I'm taking some of Jeff Tolles'.
David's not here.
But I'm not taking- I'm
David yields
filling
his
in where
time.
Jeff Tolles would have left.
Just kidding, David. Where we go.
This relates indirectly to this plan, not directly, but my point earlier about what kind of street access will there be to the park portion, whatever's left? And I'm wondering if that shouldn't be thought out sooner rather than later. I know the Parks Board is working on what might or might not be on this site, but I think that would be important because it could have a relationship to this new radius street concept and where any potential parking might be for the public. So that's related, but not,
No, it is.
not
It's-
relevant to the vote on this item.
Other comments, questions? Go ahead, Ed.
I concur with Kathy.
Me too.
Kind of figured everybody might have a chance to do that.
Anything else? All right, call the roll, please.
Weigert,
Aye.
Harry,
Aye.
Mott,
Aye.
Prop,
Aye.
Bowen,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Ford,
Aye.
Kiefer,
Aye.
Wojtek.
Aye.
Motion carried 9-0.
Right, moving on, item number 6, public hearing and zoning ordinance amendment to amend sections 3241, D3D, E3D, and F2C to permit standing seam metal roofing in single and two-family residential applications.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
More than welcome.
So item 6 is a zoning ordinance amendment to the exterior building design standards in particular, to permit the installation of standing seam metal roofing for 1 and 2 family residential applications. So these are the applicable sections in the zoning ordinance. The first one on the top there actually prohibits it for existing construction. The second one prohibits it for infill new construction, infill sites. And the third one on the bottom one there, F2C, prohibits standing seam metal roofing for new construction on non-infill sites, so new neighborhoods. So we found 3 sections in the ordinance that prohibit it currently, and we would be looking to replace these with an ordinance that regulates but permits standing seam metal roofing. So, as many of you are aware, this actually came to us from a couple that wants to do an energy and water efficient home on Jefferson. They have a site that they're looking at in an existing neighborhood. And we told them about the provisions in the ordinance that currently prohibit standing seam metal roofing for new construction. So rather than go for variance, which would be an uphill battle, we thought that it'd be more beneficial perhaps to look at amending the ordinance. So this came through both as a workshop after the December 19th Plan Commission meeting. And then I incorrectly stated in the staff report, I said January 2nd, it should have been January 16th. That's when it came through a second time. We as staff met with the applicant initially. We talked to them, researched other communities and what they allow for standing seam, how they regulate it, issues that they may have faced in terms of regulating standing seam metal roofing and in permitting it. Potential issues that we would want to look at that come up with allowing standing seam metal roofing in general, benefits and disadvantages. And then we put together a draft ordinance proposal that we presented to the Plan Commission on the 19th of December as a workshop. After that meeting, we kind of gauged the atmosphere here, found that many of you seem to be supportive of regulating standing seam metal roofing rather than prohibiting it. And then we took and refined our ordinance draft, did a little bit more research, and came back on the 16th of January with a revised draft. After that, we went back and revised the draft further, and we have that included in your staff reports. Here are some images in Oshkosh of some examples of standing seam metal roofing for residential applications. Not all of these would necessarily meet our ordinance as we proposed it, but these just give you a sense of what it might look like. And then some local examples if you're out and about. All residential. So a few there on Bent, Roosevelt. One on 12th there, looks to be a more recent. The house has been there for a while, but the standing seam metal roof is more recent. That Vinland example there, it looks like it might have a reflectance value that might be high for our ordinance on the left there, but we'd be looking to, of course, refine and look at examples like these and prevent glare and other public nuisances that might result. Ice and snow shields came up at the last meeting, the workshop where this was presented. We looked at those, and our ordinance proposal would allow for those, but it would require that they be complementary in color to the standing seam roofing that they'd be attached to. And we'd also want to prevent scenarios perhaps, like these maybe, perhaps a little bit more visually intrusive. We'd also want to make sure that fasteners are concealed. And so staff would have to take a look and verify to make sure that, some come with clamps and other fasteners that could tie into the roof that they would attach to if an applicant was to do these types of ice and snow shields. Obviously, we don't want a bunch of unsightly fasteners there. So this just kind of gives you a sense, and I think these images we presented at the last workshop, but these give a sense of what we'd be looking, like this one up here might be more appropriate, for example, colors to be consistent and actually the same in appearance. This one here, again, a little bit more perhaps intrusive visually, depending on how you look at it, but at least the same color as the roofing that it's installed on. These actually here, I presented at the last workshop, and these would be the types of roofs that we would look to prohibit. So tin roofs.
why.
Yeah, tin roofs,
You made your point.
corrugated metal, these you might associate with residential applications, storage building, or I mean, not residential, rural applications, storage buildings, agricultural. These would be examples that we wouldn't want to see here in the city. They do have some exposed fasteners. They could rust easily. We'd be looking to require a baked-on manufacturer applied finish. So, not field applied painting. We'd prohibit that. We want stuff that the applicant or the owner could maintain over the course of the lifespan of the roof. Some of these lifespans can be 50 years. So you don't want to see something like this that's literally, decomposing or decaying, rusting before your eyes, if you're a resident in the neighborhood. So these are just examples of roofs that we prohibit. And then I can go further into detail for, if anybody has questions, but the recommendation is, as I mentioned, we would repeal the 3 prohibitions on standing seam metal roofing and replace it with an ordinance, as you see in its draft form here at the end of the staff report, that would regulate and try to allow standing seam metal roofing, but allow us a framework to regulate it with.
Thank you. Technical questions? Yes.
I mean, I think I asked this before, but is there any common understanding of what a concealed fastener is versus an exposed one?
The way we were looking at it, a concealed fastener, you would not be able to see. You would see like the metal roofing panel. If I go back, maybe I can show an example.
Like from the ground, or?
Yeah, from the ground, and then even from like say a second floor window, and you're looking down on the, if it's a single story residential, but a house.
Yeah.
If you could see it from above, or you can see it from the street, that's how we were looking at it.
Okay.
Andrew?
My apologies, you guys may have talked about this previously, but why is the current ordinance in place?
I think, talking to Darren, there was aesthetic considerations, and then there were noise concerns too. I think a lot of people perhaps associate, if you're in a barn and you hear the hail hitting the roof, there's no underlayment, and so there can be that pinging, there can be a noise that people were concerned with. So it was the noise and the aesthetics. Yep.
Ed?
Individual subdivision design regulations would be able to override this, I'm assuming?
Covenants, private covenants.
Yeah. Correct. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
They can be more restrictive, they just can't be less restrictive.
Right.
Other technical questions? All right, anyone here from the audience to speak to this item today? Now's your chance. Thank you for your patience, by the way.
Happy to be here. My name is Misty McPhee, 1216 Cedar, and this is my husband, Darren Van Driel. Sorry, Darren Van Driel, also same address. We are said couple that Stephen referred to, and we are thrilled with the process that has gone so far. We are very excited to build a net zero home in Oshkosh, especially in a part of town that we think deserves a great deal of attention and could benefit from some revitalization. To speak to the aesthetics and noise, I'm gathering there's not much concern on the Plan Commission for that, but just to say we have done a lot of research, as Stephen has done as well, that shows that the modern standing seam metal roofs do not have noise issues depending on the underlayments. That currently, the way they're currently constructed, noise is not an issue either for the occupant or for their neighbors. And as far as aesthetics go, I feel like this is kind of where roofs are headed. Mostly because of their sustainable and economic benefits, but multi-million-dollar homes are being commonly built with these kinds of roofs now, so I don't think aesthetics are going to be an issue in a couple of years. I think these are going to be common.
I think everybody, maybe I'm just here for moral support. I think everybody covered everything. I've worked on plenty of asphalt roofs, and these last a lot longer. Asphalt ends up in the landfill. These can be recycled. The life expectancy is sometimes twice as much as an asphalt roof, and I'm 50-some years old. I don't want to crawl up on there and do it another 20 years. So,
right, any questions from
Thank you.
petitioners, as long as they're here? Go ahead, Kath.
I want to thank you for bringing this to our attention.
Yep.
But I think we overlooked, we were too hasty in prohibiting metal roofs when we were working
Well,
through the
thank,
process.
thank you for considering it.
When I was reading that, it caught me by surprise that standing seam was prohibited, and corrugated is allowed at this point right now. And I was
Yeah.
rather surprised by that, so.
Well, and I appreciate you followed this ordinance quite carefully, of course, and feel that the provisions that we've got in here are appropriate.
Yeah. Stephen has done some very good work. A lot of places that we looked into weren't really addressing the reflectiveness of it.
Oh, okay.
And so, if you were a neighbor at certain times of the day, that could really be obnoxious. And with the colors and the reflectance of the material, it's definitely a good consideration.
But then to play devil's advocate to that a little bit, the darker the color, the more heat island you're creating, right? So it's one of those things, aesthetics versus how we want to treat the environment as a whole. And so lighter colors are more environmentally friendly, but the darker colors, and personally, I think the darker colors look better. So, it's that there's a trade-off there.
Always.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Oh, hold on.
I just have an additional question for you guys.
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Sit down.
Anybody else here to speak to this item before we get back to our questions? All right, thank you. Okay, go ahead, Tom.
So this ordinance covers vertical and horizontal installations? Is there a breakout? Because everything you showed was vertical, but there are a lot of advances in metal roofing where there are a lot of now horizontal applications with stamped-in shingles and that kind of stuff.
Which we talked about, I believe, at the workshop.
Yeah, Stampton would be permitted at this point.
Yeah, the metal shingles would be permitted currently. I think the standing seam is the only thing that's currently prohibited, so this would be for the vertical ones, I believe.
Yeah.
Yep.
Other discussion?
If you live out west in the mountains in high UV environment, you see these roofs everywhere. I mean, it's common.
I would like to also note, like the petitioners did, the work that city staff, particularly Stephen, have done on this. I think it would, you really embrace this, and we learned a lot, as Kathy
Oh,
pointed
yes.
out.
Thank you.
It's helpful.
The metal suppliers owe you a debt of gratitude.
All right, any other discussion?
Tariffs.
Let's call the roll.
I'll make a motion.
We
Oh,
need a
pardon me.
motion.
Sorry. Is somebody second? Okay, Tom second. All right, now,
Weigert,
Aye.
Perry,
Aye.
Mott,
Aye.
Crop,
Aye?
Bowen,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Ford,
Aye.
Burke,
Aye.
Wojtek.
aye.
Motion carried 9-0.
Okay, any other items? Darren has his finger up.
April 4th, we're planning on running the corridors plan for approval. Do you want us to have a special meeting before that with you? Or do you want to run it? April 3rd is a plan commission meeting. We were potentially considering special meetings on March 14th or April 22nd.
March 26th.
I'm sorry, March 22nd.
I think that one's gonna be big, right?
You had discussed a little bit at the original workshop.
Yeah, I think
we
it's
had on it to kind of
special
upper bottom.
meeting.
And
I
March
think would be
26th, that
helpful.
week
I think
is
it would.
spring break.
22nd.
So the 14th would be next Wednesday, or the following Thursday would be the 22nd. Were kind of the two dates that we were looking at for it. Anyone have them?
I knew I would.
I can't do the 22nd.
I won't be.
Oh.
Get to choose who's more important.
Yeah, exactly. Divide that baby, I guess. I don't know.
Just pick one and we'll figure.
Yeah, just pick, I mean, I think
not
we pick
everybody's-
one and we
somebody
go
can't
there.
come there.
March
Yeah.
14 is a Wednesday and March 22nd is a
But you think there's,
Thursday.
do you think there's value to having a meeting?
I think there's value having a
Yes.
special meeting.
There's gonna be a
where it's-
long, it's gonna be a long
Yeah.
discussion.
All right, okay.
And our agendas lately have been,
Yeah, I know, okay, all right.
Painfully long.
keeping us here until 8 o'clock is inhumane, Darren.
I don't,
Especially if there's no food flowing in or out.
Yeah.
I
All
don't have
right.
a budget for that.
Now, we have workshop following, so, but,
Motion to adjourn.
thank you.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, we're adjourned.